If you're ever having a bad day, just wait until you hear about what happened to Juan Catalan. So this dude was wrongfully convicted for slaying a 16-year-old girl and ended up serving 6 months in jail before he was released. Want to know the reason he was let go? A baseball game and a TV show. One May evening in 2003, a 16-year-old girl named Martha was chilling with a friend outside on the curb of her home in Sun Valley, California. As they were hanging out, a suspicious car drove up super slowly and started circling the area. The mysterious driver then parked, got out of the car, and walked up to Martha. He asked who she was. She told him, "I'm Martha, you know me." Well, that was a pretty abrupt ending. Martha's friend ran away and the guy got back into his car and drove off. At this point, Martha's mom ran outside and started screaming hysterically. Everyone in the neighborhood heard her cries, and I'm sure started to get nosy about what happened, because that's what neighbors are for, right? The cops arrived at the house pretty quickly and frantically sectioned off the crime scene with tape. They began taking photos and marking the evidence and questioned the nearby witnesses, just trying to get a grasp of what went down. There was a phone on the ground nearby that was determined to have belonged to Martha's friend, who fled the scene as soon as the dude grabbed his weapon. When questioned by the police, Martha's mom said that she heard the bullets, but she didn't see what happened. And the neighbors said the same thing, but they did mention seeing a suspicious car pull up before the Glock rang out. But as soon as one of the detectives found out Martha's name, he panicked. A few months earlier, this same detective worked on a case of another teen slaying that took place where Martha was one of the witnesses. Okay. That has to be connected. And the detective thought the same thing because he immediately called his partner who worked on the case with him. Now, let's go back in time to November 2002, about 5 months before Martha was slain. Martha was asleep in bed when she was awoken at 2 in the morning to the sound of someone tapping on her window. Oh, heck no, if someone tapped on my window in the middle of the night, you better believe I'd run and hide in the closet. I mean, I call my mama anytime the hot water heater makes a noise past 8 p.m., but that's just me. Well, as creepy as the whole window tapping thing was, the person doing it was actually one of Martha's girlfriends who was trying to get her to go out. Okay, but who asks a 60-year-old person to go out at 2 a.m.? Like, first of all, she's a bit young for that, but also 2 a.m. is normally the time people start coming home from going out, not leaving. The friend who we'll call Sophia pulled up to Martha's house that night with her boyfriend Christian. Christian stayed in the car while Sophia got out to ask Martha if she wanted to hang with them. Martha was talking it over with Sophia, and they suddenly were interrupted by the sound of bullets. Sophia freaked out and immediately jumped through Martha's window to hide, but Christian was still out in the car. And it turns out the bad guy with the Glock was aiming at him. So once Martha and Sophia knew the coast was clear and the hitman was gone, they went outside to check things out. Christian was slumped over in his car, covered in bullet wounds. He was still alive at this point, but by the time the medics made it over to the scene, he had passed away. When the cops showed up, they separated Martha and Sophia and started questioning them. Sophia claimed that when Martha heard the firearm, she shouted out that it was Peps, which is a nickname of Martha's ex-boyfriend, Jose Ledesma. That's such an odd nickname. I'm wondering where he got it from. I want to say pepperoni or Pepsi or something, but I'm sure it was a bit more scandalous than that. Or maybe he was just like a super peppy person. So our guy Jose wasn't just Martha's ex. He was also a member of the Vineland Boys, a notorious criminal crew from the Valley. Dang, I was hoping that was the name of a boy band, not a violent mob. I mean, I love BTS, but I'm sure they wouldn't do anything quite this scandalous. So even though Sophia had all this tea about the alleged suspect, Martha was interviewed and denied ever saying anything about her ex. Okay, but why would Sophia lie and call Martha out like that, especially if they were friends? Maybe she had her own master plot to get Jose arrested or something and didn't want to take the fall for it. After Martha denied accusing Jose, she did mention to the cops that she believed the crime could have been done by one of the Vineland Boys. Regardless of what Martha did or didn't scream that night, investigators pinned Jose as the main suspect. And this guy was already looking super sus because at that time, he was being questioned for another crime that took place a few days prior where someone was taken out by bullets. And the bullets from that crime scene and this crime were the same type of firearm, a 9mm Glock. No way, Jose. That night, the detectives got a search warrant to look through Jose's house for clues. Under his mattress, officials found a loaded rifle and a bunch of letters from his fellow Vineland boys who were locked up in prison. Is it just me, or is it a bit concerning that this guy keeps a loaded firearm under his mattress? I hope he doesn't move around too much in his sleep because it might not end well. So when Jose's house was searched, he wasn't actually home. He was apparently hanging out with fellow Vineland boy Mario Catalan. That next morning, Jose found out that the police had come to his place and immediately packed up and headed for Mexico with Mario and Mario's girlfriend. They checked into a hotel in Tijuana, but their vacation was cut short when someone saw a fight break out between Mario and his girlfriend. The person who witnessed the argument ended up calling Mexican police to report domestic violence. Officers responded to the call and pulled Mario's girlfriend aside to question her. During their conversation, Mario's girlfriend told officials that her boyfriend and his friend were wanted in LA. And that, my friends, is how you get revenge on your abusive criminal boyfriend. Expose them. After alerting LA authorities, the Mexican police escorted Mario and Jose back to Los Angeles, where they were taken into custody. Investigators immediately started to question the two men about the crime that left Christian lifeless in the car. Jose claimed he was innocent and told the cops they had the wrong person, but detectives were certain Jose was the perp, so they decided to pull out their best interrogation tactic, which turned out to be their worst. Investigators told Jose that they already had a bunch of witnesses lined up testifying against him and Mario, including his ex-girlfriend, Martha. But Jose claimed he didn't know a Martha. I feel like everyone knows at least like one Martha. It's a pretty common name. And didn't he date the girl? He must have really been trying to block that relationship out of his mind. Or maybe he denied knowing her to try avoid a conviction. So detectives told Jose that Martha was given a 6-pack, which is basically a piece of paper that has 6 mugshots printed on it. Think a lineup, but with pictures. They told Jose that when Martha was asked to circle the marksman from Christian's incident, she circled his photo. Despite their threats, things weren't really getting anywhere with Jose, so the detectives had this grand idea to show Jose the 6-pack that Martha circled in hopes that he'd confess. But Martha never circled anything. The detectives did. What? This detective seriously is setting up a 16-year-old girl? Is that even legal? So this detective had the grand idea that if he circled Jose's pictures and signed Martha's initials, it would scare Jose enough to confess. But this detective didn't just stop there. He even wrote a sentence on the paper that explicitly said Jose was the man who slayed Christian. This detective is such a snake. Why can't he just try to get Jose to confess the old-fashioned way? So, Mario was also interrogated by the police. Like Jose, he contested any involvement in the crime. Once again, detectives tried another one of their tactics to see if Mario would break, but it wasn't nearly as bad as the last one. So after Jose and Mario were sent back to LA from Mexico, a 9mm handheld was found at their hotel room in Tijuana. And if you remember, that was the same type of weapon that was used to take out Christian. Detectives told Mario that they already had the weapon in custody and knew it would be a match for the one used at the crime. But Mario didn't seem fazed by any of this because he continued to claim innocence. The investigators were super frustrated, but they came up with another plan to catch these guys. They placed Jose and Mario in a cell together with a hidden microphone that was recording the whole time. Mario and Jose both talked about their interrogation and brought up Martha's name. But the terrible thing about all of this is that Martha had no idea the police were using her name as bait to convict these men. I can't believe that these detectives thought it was okay to toss out the name of a 16-year-old girl to make her look like a snitch, especially when they were dealing with a group known for performing violent acts. So Martha was never warned that she might be in danger after they set her up. Wait, does this mean the police literally set her up to be slain? Because they put such a big target on her back from their whole interrogation tactic. A little over a week before she was slain, Martha was brought to court as a witness in Jose and Mario's preliminary hearing for Christian's case. She was questioned about the incident, but was super reluctant. The prosecutor even asked her to point out the marksman, but she said she didn't really know what he looked like. Well, now I think you can tell there was a clear motive for someone to want Martha gone for good. Someone wanted to punish her for testifying or keep her from spilling any more information at Jose and Mario's trial. So, let's get back to the case. As a refresher, she was knocked out on the curb outside her house. The only witness was Martha's friend who was talking to her when a mystery man approached. Martha's friend later worked with investigators to create a sketch of the guy who smoked Martha out. But it wasn't until 3 months after Martha was snuffed that a suspect was arrested. It was 24-year-old Juan Catalan, aka Mario's brother. Small world. So investigators already knew whoever did this was connected to the Violin boys based on the whole thing that happened with Jose and Mario's interrogations. After going through and comparing the sketch with a bunch of members, they turned their focus to the brother of one of the members that looked just like the sketch. Juan became a lead suspect because not only was he related to a member of the Violin boys, but he was also at his brother's trial, the one that Martha testified at. Detectives theorized that Juan was trying to protect his brother from being thrown in jail, so instead, he knocked out the girl that could have snitched on him. Juan was then arrested and brought in for questioning. He claimed he wasn't responsible for slaying Martha and begged to be given a polygraph test to prove his innocence. But detectives decided to go back to their brilliant tactics and make up 3 fake six-packs with Juan's photo circled in all of them. Did these people not learn their lesson the first time? The whole photo circling setup is clearly the reason Martha got snuffed. Juan kept trying to convince the cops that he didn't do it, but they didn't believe him. But that's when he met his lawyer, who asked him what he was doing that night of Martha's big exit. Juan thought back and he remembered that he attended a Dodgers baseball game that night with his 6-year-old daughter, his cousin, and his friend. Juan brought up his alibi to investigators and even had ticket stubs to prove it, but they still didn't believe him. At this point, Juan was facing serious charges that may have ended in his demise, so Juan, his lawyer, and his family are all searching for a way to prove his alibi. His lawyer went to Dodger Stadium one day, and when it was empty, he took pictures of Juan's seats. He looked through hours of footage from the game to see if he could spot Juan or someone sitting next to him that could testify he was there. But all of the people Juan's lawyer reached out to claimed they didn't see Juan close enough to confidently testify in court. Juan's daughter was brought to the stand and she told the court that her dad brought her to the game that night and went into detail about all the snacks he got her. I mean, for me, that's the whole point of sports. The food, the nachos, the hot dogs, the ice cream, especially in those little Dodger hats. So good. Despite the efforts of Juan's lawyers and family members, the prosecution pointed out how suspicious it was that Juan didn't tell the investigators about his alibi from the get-go. Okay, but by the time he was arrested, 3 months had already passed, so I feel like it's pretty normal to not immediately remember what he was doing that night. Heck, I don't even remember what I did last night. Juan's lawyer started to get super concerned about the fate of his client. He then asked Juan if there was anything else he remembered about the game that could have helped prove that he was there. Juan told his lawyer that he remembered seeing a big film crew there that seemed to be recording a TV show or something. His lawyer got in touch with the media relations department at Dodger Stadium and found out there was a production company filming something that day. It was the TV show Curb Your Enthusiasm. Juan's lawyer got in touch with the team from that show and explained Juan's unique situation. He asked them if he could gain access to the footage so he could sift through any snippets of Juan in the background. They first told the lawyer that he'd have to wait until after the show aired, but after consulting with the creator, Larry David, they were given the green light to look through the video footage. Juan remembered getting up to get concessions for him and his daughter, and being stopped by the camera crew while they filmed a take. In between the takes, the crew let Juan and his daughter walk back to their seats, and their path was in clear view of the camera, which caught the whole thing on video. And just like that, they had their proof. Juan's lawyer was over the moon. They finally had evidence his client was at the game. Oh my gosh, I cannot get over this. A comedy TV show is literally the reason Juan was able to prove his alibi. And good thing his daughter was hungry for snacks, because if he hadn't gotten up for food, I wonder if he would have been caught on camera. But Juan isn't in the clear yet. Even though he was spotted in a few clips at the baseball game, Juan still could have made it out in time to drive by Martha's pad and ice her out. And after the game, Juan dropped off his cousin right down the street from where Martha lived. So Juan's lawyer went back to the drawing board and brainstormed another way to prove Juan's innocence. He got in touch with Juan's cell phone provider and was able to locate the cell tower Juan's phone was pinging off of at the time of the incident. It was a cell tower right by the stadium. Juan's phone record showed that he was in the area until at least 10:12 p.m. and the incident took place at 10:32. And if you know anything about LA, there's a lot of traffic. Like, a lot of traffic. There was no way Juan could have made it up to Martha's place in time to whack her. After that piece of information was added to the evidence pool, the judge dismissed the case against Juan for insufficient evidence. That day, Juan was released back into the world. By that time, he had already been in jail for 6 months while the investigation was going on. That's a long time for someone to be in jail for something they didn't do. And I wonder how awkward it was when he was released. Like, for half a year, this man was made out to be a villainous Terminator, and now he's proven completely innocent. I also can't imagine how relieved Juan must have been once this case was dropped. He was seriously about to live his whole life behind bars because he matched a pretty generic sketch and was the brother of a violent criminal. After the fact, Juan sued the city of LA and its police force and was awarded $320,000 settlement. But now that Juan was proven innocent, that means Martha's slayer was still on the loose. That is, until 3 years after the crime when the FBI gets involved. So, investigators were actually reviewing the evidence from Christian's case because the trial for that crime was coming up. In the audio recording captured by the microphone in Jose and Mario's holding cell, there was something super sus. It was the recording of a phone call Jose made that day to someone named Cokester. Juan asked Cokester if he knew a girl with the first initial M. He then said, "I need her to disappear. She's dropping dimes." Y'all, it sounds like Jose called up Martha's hitman. But at the time of the initial investigation, the police didn't find out about this call. The recordings were transcribed by an outside company who apparently did a terrible job because they never caught the part where Jose literally told his friend to take Martha out. And good thing the FBI got involved when they did, because they were actually able to identify this Cokester character as another member of the Vineland Boys named Javier. They determined Javier worked with another Vineland boy named Raul to slay Martha. And here's where our story ends. Javier, Raul, and Jose, who was already in jail for Christian's demise, were all charged for Martha's case and sentenced to a life in prison without the possibility of parole. Oh my gosh, this whole case is like one big curveball. And those detectives were trying so hard. Like, they set up Martha to be whacked, put Juan in jail for half a year, and then totally disregarded the phone call that could have solved the whole thing. My heart goes out to the friends and family of Christian and Martha. It's horrible they had to go through such heartbreak over a bad group of guys, but I'm glad Juan and his family didn't meet the same fate. And who would have guessed getting concessions at a baseball game would be such an integral moment for Juan's case? Well, I guess that goes to show you should always indulge in yummy snacks like these mac and cheese bites. See you next time.